My daughter made me file a report about disgusting things my ex had done, but now, at her engagement party, she confesses that she lied to separate us, right in front of her fiancé's shocked face. One night, my daughter came to see me in tears. She was shaking so much I thought she was physically ill. I had never seen her like that, so broken, so scared. But when she finally spoke, my whole body went cold. She said she couldn't stay silent any longer. She said that my husband, her stepfather, had made her feel uncomfortable for a long time. Her stepfather had been in her life since she was 8 years old. He had raised her, cared for her, and loved her as his own. I trusted him with everything. And now my daughter was telling me she didn't feel safe with him. That same night, I made her stepfather leave. He was confused, asking me what was going on, trying to understand why I was suddenly telling him to pack his things and go. He kept asking why, but I refused to answer. I refused to let him see my daughter again. I called my brother, and he came immediately, standing by my side as I made it clear to her stepfather that there was nothing to discuss. He had to leave, and I never wanted to see him again. When he realized I wasn't backing down, his confusion turned to desperation. He begged, swore he didn't understand, pleaded with me to listen to him. But I was already dialing the police. I didn't care what he had to say, my daughter came first. Once he was gone, everything moved quickly. The police got involved, and although there were no immediate charges, the damage was already done. My family stood by me, telling me I was doing the right thing. My mother was devastated. My brother was furious. And my daughter's biological father suddenly stepped in ways he never had before. He told me he had always known something was wrong. He said that's why my daughter had never fully accepted her stepfather. And me, drowning in guilt, I believed him. My daughter seemed happy to have her biological father around. She smiled more, seemed lighter. And even though I was still recovering from the destruction of my marriage, I convinced myself that this was what she needed. Her stepfather, on the other hand, never stopped trying to reach me. Even after I blocked him, even after I had completely removed him from our lives, he kept fighting. He sent letters, emails, and messages through mutual friends, begging me to just talk to him. But I didn't. I had made my decision. I thought I had done the right thing. I thought I had protected my daughter. I had no idea that the real nightmare was still ahead. Because after that night, everything changed. My ex-husband was gone from our lives. The report was filed. And my daughter became my sole focus. I worked harder than ever to make sure she never lacked a father figure, that she had everything she needed. She went to therapy. We moved to another town. For years, I lived believing that I had done the right thing, that I had protected her, and that I was there for her when she needed me the most. But there was always something strange. At first, I thought it was the trauma. She had been distant, but that was to be expected. She was a teenager then, and the whole situation had been a lot for her. She got angry with me often, withdrew into herself, and barely spoke about what had happened. I thought she needed time. Even when she refused to continue with the court-appointed therapist after a few sessions, I thought it was just her way of coping. When she showed no interest in talking about what happened, I assumed she just wanted to move on. I let her. I didn't push. I thought I was doing the right thing by giving her space. Years passed, and our relationship never healed the way I thought it would. We weren't distant exactly, but there was always a wall between us, one I never fully understood. She graduated, got a good job, and eventually met someone. When she introduced me to her fiancé, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. More importantly, she seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. But instead of being the night that marked a new beginning, it became the night everything fell apart. Because that's when I finally learned the truth. The party was beautiful. She and her fiancé had rented a cozy little event hall. It wasn't crowded, just close family and friends of the couple. Then my daughter started to speak to everyone. She thanked them all for coming, talked about how much she loved her fiancé, and shared some funny stories about their relationship. But then she turned to me. She said there was something she had kept to herself for years, something she felt she needed to say before starting this new chapter in her life. And then she said it. She admitted, right there in front of everyone, that the accusations she made against my ex-husband, the ones that tore our family apart, that led to a police investigation and isolated him from everyone where it wasn't true. She had made it all up. She said she did it because she couldn't bear the thought of someone who wasn't her biological father being in my life. She laughed, like it was some silly childhood joke she had played. And then she had the audacity to say she hoped we could all move on now that the truth was out. As if it was nothing. As if she hadn't destroyed lives. As if she hadn't ruined a man's reputation, wrecked a marriage, and left devastation behind her. Her fiancé, standing next to her, looked horrified. He wasn't the only one. The entire energy in the room shifted. But before I could react, her fiancé did. He asked her if she was joking, because it wasn't funny, and she was making everyone uncomfortable. She just smiled and said she had always wanted it to be just her and her father, that she thought it was the only way. Then she turned to me, waiting for me to do something. But what was I supposed to do? Laugh? Hug her? Thank her for this twisted confession? I couldn't even look at her. I turned around and walked out of that room. I heard her call after me, but I didn't stop. I made it outside, breathing heavily, my mind racing with everything I had just heard. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about what she had done to me. It was about what she had done to him. The man I had divorced. Pushed away. Turned into a villain. For something he never did. I was so shaken I don't even remember driving home. I did it on autopilot. I pulled into the driveway. But I couldn't bring myself to get out of the car. My body felt frozen. Like I was trapped in a stasis field. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. I didn't need to look to know who it was. She was probably calling to smooth things over. I let it ring until it stopped. A second later, it vibrated again. And again. On the fifth call. I turned off my phone and sat in silence. I thought I had felt pain before. When I went through the divorce. When I sat in that courtroom watching my ex-husband be investigated for a crime that never happened. When I watched the light in his eyes go out. Replaced by something hollow and broken. But this was something else entirely. This was betrayal in its purest form. And I had no idea what to do with it. When I finally went inside, I was still on autopilot. My hands moved to take off my coat. My feet carried me to the kitchen. But my mind was still trying to make sense of everything. How could my daughter have lied about something like this? Because no matter how many years had passed, I had been complicit in what happened to my ex-husband. I had believed my daughter without question. I had turned my back on him. Destroyed his life. And never doubted for a second that I was doing the right thing. I couldn't undo what I had done. But I could take responsibility. And that meant one thing. I had to contact him. I had no idea where he was. How he had been living. Or even if he'd be willing to talk to me. I spent the next hour searching for him. He had no social media presence, which didn't surprise me. Eventually, I found an old friend of his. I sent a message. Not even sure if I'd get a response. To my surprise, only 10 minutes passed before he replied. He sent me a phone number. When I told him who I was, there was silence. I braced myself for him to hang up. To yell. To demand how I dared to call him after all these years. Instead, he laughed. He said he had wondered when I would finally find out. I asked him what he meant by that. He told me he always knew the truth would eventually come out. That a lie that big couldn't stay buried forever. He said he had waited. Not because he wanted justice. But because he wanted me to live with the choice I had made. I told him I was sorry. But it wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. But it was all I had. He was silent for a long moment. And then he asked me, "What made you realize it now?" I told him everything that had happened. He said that after everything, he had learned to live with what had happened. He said he had rebuilt his life as best he could. But it was never the same. He had lost everything. His career. His reputation. The people he once called family. And he lost it all because of me. I told him he was right. And that I wanted to make things right now. He asked, "What does that even mean?" And I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know where to begin. After we hung up, I just sat there for a long time. I had taken the first step. But what could I possibly do now to fix this? Or at least make it better for him? There was no way to undo this. No way to erase the years of suffering my daughter's lies had caused. But there was accountability. And that was something I had to face. I checked my phone, knowing there were probably dozens of missed calls and text messages from my daughter. In all of them, she asked where I was, if I was coming back to talk to her, and that she didn't understand why I couldn't just let it go after so many years. I wasn't ready to talk to her. I didn't know if I ever would be. But I knew one thing for sure. She is not the victim in this story. And I'm not going to let her pretend she is. Now I wonder what I can do to help my ex-husband. I can't undo what happened years ago. But I can do something to make up for it. What advice do you have? Update 1. I've been receiving some advice and have taken the first steps to try to make this better for my ex-husband. The next morning, I woke up to more missed calls than I cared to count. My daughter had been relentless. Message after message. Voicemail after voicemail. All desperately trying to reframe the situation. I still didn't respond. Her feelings weren't my concern. And I didn't even know what I would say. I had thought that contacting him would be the hardest part. But now I was realizing that facing my daughter was going to be so much worse. By noon, she had resorted to showing up at my door. I heard the doorbell, followed by frantic knocking. Then her voice through the door. She called out for me, demanding that I at least speak to her. I sat at the kitchen table, unmoving. She had no idea how much I had already given her. I had spent years by her side, believing her, fighting for her, turning my back on someone who had never hurt her. Because I trusted her. And now she thought this was something we could just talk through. The knocking got louder. She said she knew I was home. Still, I didn't respond. She said she never meant for things to go that far. That she had been a child. Emotional. That she had made a mistake. But she did it because she loved me. Loved me. That word felt like an insult coming from her mouth. She loved me so much. That she took away my choices. Dictated my life. And ruined someone else's. Without an ounce of remorse. She said she thought I would understand. After I'd had a few hours to calm down. I wasn't ready to face her. Not yet. So I did the one thing she never would have expected. I walked to the door and turned off the doorbell. The click was soft, but she heard it. She stood there, asking if I was really going to ignore her like this. Then finally she said that if I wanted to be dramatic, that was my problem. But she wasn't going to stay there all day. I listened as she stomped down the stairs in anger and left. The next day, I met with a lawyer. I explained the situation as best I could. The lawyer listened patiently and then asked a simple question. What do you want to do? The truth was, I didn't know. But I did know one thing for sure. I wanted to make it clear to my daughter that this wasn't something she could walk away from easily. She had ruined someone's life. And she needed to make amends somehow. The lawyer nodded, saying there were legal ways to protect myself if she decided to escalate things. He asked if I wanted to take legal action against her for what she had done to my ex-husband. I told him I needed time to think. And he handed me a folder. Told me to take my time. But not too much time. These kinds of decisions don't get easier, he said. That night, my daughter called again. And this time I answered. Not because I wanted to talk. But because I needed her to hear me. At first, she sounded relieved. Like she had won something. Just by getting me to pick up. She said she knew I needed space. But she wanted me to know she never meant to hurt me. I let her speak. Then, when she was done, I told her. I don't trust you. I told her I didn't know if I ever would again. I told her I wasn't even sure if I wanted her in my life anymore. I told her I didn't want to be her mother anymore. And that I was ashamed she was my daughter. She went silent. Then her voice broke as she asked. If I really meant it. I told her, yes. She started crying. Begging me not to reject her. Over a mistake she made when she was a child. I told her this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. She may have been a child when she did it. But she lived with the knowledge of what she had done well into adulthood. And never tried to fix it. I only found out now. Because she thought it would be a good idea. To cleanse her conscience at a moment of celebration. And expected me to just forgive her. I've now turned off my phone. Because I don't want her calling me again. I need time to think about whether or not I will take the legal path the lawyer offered. Which, to be honest, I think I will. But even then, I don't think it'll be enough to repair my ex's life. This lawsuit would only cover what her lie did to me emotionally. Nothing more. He would need to sue her for slander and defamation. And that's something only he can do. As the lawyer explained to me. And if he hasn't done it by now, I don't know if he ever will. My daughter is a narcissist. It's the only way to explain her behavior. The thing with people like her is that they don't apologize because they're truly sorry. They apologize because they don't like the consequences. And I wasn't going to let her escape those. A week passed with no contact. And I spent my days trying to piece my life back together. Trying to fill the void she had left behind. It wasn't easy. I had spent so many years fighting for her. Protecting her. Sacrificing for her. Letting go of that instinct wasn't something I could do overnight. But I kept reminding myself over and over. That she was the one who broke that bond. Not me. She was the one who took a knife. And murdered our relationship. The day she decided that her hatred toward my ex-husband was worth more than my happiness. The day she decided to burn everything down. Just to get her way. And now she stood in the ashes. Surprised that no one was reaching out a hand. Then one afternoon, there she was, back at my door again. For a brief moment, I wondered if this was it. If this was finally the time she would take responsibility. Show true remorse. And stop making excuses. But then she opened her mouth. And the first thing she said was, I don't deserve this. She said she had spent days thinking about everything that had happened. And that was her conclusion. I looked at her, and I slapped her. I know a parent should never hit their child. But in that moment, what she said made me feel so powerless. It was the only thing that came to mind. She was stunned. She hadn't come expecting that. She said, I'm your daughter. And I told her. That doesn't mean anything anymore. She said she had been young and stupid. I said that doesn't erase what she did. She said she thought I would get over it. I said we were far from being over anything. And I didn't have faith that we ever would be. She asked if there was anything she could do to fix this. I said she could start by going to apologize. And pray that my ex forgives her. Then she should make a public statement. As publicly as possible. To try to clear that man's name. And pray even harder that his reputation can be restored. Because if not, she will have to live with the guilt. If she even has a conscience of having ruined a good man's life. She looked at me and made a face. Like she wasn't going to do any of that. But I told her. Only after that, maybe I'll consider forgiving you. She said we should find some other way to resolve this. But that there was no way in hell. She'd do something that would ruin her life. I told her. These are your consequences. She could face them like an adult. Or she could continue to be the child she claimed to be. Her response was, I'm your daughter. You can't put a man above me. But I told her that right now. I couldn't even look at her. Let alone see her as a daughter. I told her. Start doing the right thing. And maybe one day there's a chance to fix our relationship. Until then, nothing. Then I closed the door. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do now. But my mission is to at least make my ex's life better. I don't care what happens to my daughter anymore. As far as I know, her wedding is either at risk or has been fully cancelled. But that's not my problem. I have more important things to worry about. Update 3. It's been a month. And in that time, I've done exactly what I promised myself I'd do. I've taken steps to undo the damage my daughter caused. To finally set things right. It hasn't been easy. But I wasn't going to let things continue the way they were. Even if there were consequences for my daughter. But I'll talk more about that later. First, I had another visitor. Not my daughter this time. Though for a moment I thought it was her again. It was her fiancé. Or rather, her ex-fiancé. And he looked just as broken as I felt. Because during this time, I'd barely eaten or slept with everything going on. And he seemed the same. I invited him in. We sat in the living room. The air was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, I broke the silence and told him I was sorry. Sorry he had been dragged into this nightmare. Sorry he had gotten caught in the crossfire of my daughter's selfishness. Sorry he almost committed to someone capable of such destruction. He gave me a small, sad smile and said he appreciated it. But that he wasn't there for an apology. He was there to tell me in person. That the engagement was officially over. I had assumed as much from the rumors. And his reaction at the party. But I thanked him for coming to tell me directly. He said that after everything, he couldn't trust her anymore. That no matter how many times she swore she had changed, he would always wonder what else she might be capable of. And that kind of doubt isn't something a marriage can survive. And honestly, I understood. And I told him that. Then for a moment, we just sat there. Two people brought together by a storm. Neither of us had asked for. Then he shifted in his seat and said. There was another reason he came. I looked at him, waiting. And then he said something I didn't expect. He asked me to publicly clear my ex-husband's name. For a moment, I just stared at him. Not because I disagreed. I was already planning to do it. But because I didn't expect him to care that much. He explained that after learning the truth, he looked into my ex-husband's case. He saw the damage the accusation had done. And he realized that even though my daughter had confessed, in front of a room full of people, that wouldn't be enough to erase the stain on my ex's name. Not legally and not socially. People believe what they want to believe. And some would still see him as a monster. No matter how much evidence there was. He said that wasn't fair. And if my ex was ever going to have a real chance at moving on, he needed official justice. I told him I was already working on it. I explained that after my daughter's confession, I contacted the videographer who had filmed the engagement party. I got the footage, clear, undeniable proof. Her voice saying those words in front of dozens of witnesses. And I had already started the legal process to formally clear my ex-husband's name. I also told him I was working on the social side. I contacted lawyers, reviewed police records, and did everything I could to make sure as many people as possible saw that he was innocent. He said he was glad to hear that. Then he told me that if I needed any kind of support, financial, legal, anything, he would do his best to help me. That even if he wasn't connected to my daughter anymore, he wasn't going to sit by and let an innocent man suffer for something he didn't do. I told him I appreciated it, but that this was something I needed to fix on my own. I need to pay. Not just with money, but with time. I see it as a kind of penance for having taken part in this. Even if I was deceived, the damage is done. Later that night, I sat with my brother to go over the latest updates. He's the only family member I've wanted to stay in contact with through all this. He was there when I went to the lawyer's office. He helped me review the legal paperwork. And most importantly, he's been keeping the rest of the family updated. So I didn't have to. I knew they were talking about it. I knew they had their opinions. I knew some of them were probably still trying to understand how my daughter could have done something so monstrous. But I didn't have the patience or energy to explain anything to anyone. I was exhausted. And the only thing I cared about was fixing what could be fixed. So I let my brother handle the rest. This morning, I received an email from my lawyer. The legal proceedings were moving forward. The process to clear my ex-husband's name was officially underway. And not only that, I'm suing my daughter for the emotional damage she caused me. And once that's settled, I plan to release the video publicly. I don't know if that will be legal. But I don't care. I just don't want it to interfere with the legal process of clearing my ex's name. Once that's done, I'll release it. I would have preferred if my daughter had done all of this herself. But she doesn't care. So I can't stand by and do nothing. Even if it would have made things easier for him. I assured him I wouldn't give up and would do whatever it took. And part of that was the damages lawsuit against my daughter. Not for what she did when she was a minor, since she can't be held legally accountable for that at her age. I realize now I didn't explain that clearly in my earlier updates. But here I will. I sued her for the emotional harm she caused me by keeping up the lie for years, even into adulthood, including situations where we talked about it. And she still chose to stick to her story, while the actual event happened when she was a child. Continuing the lie as a sort of emotional fraud into adulthood is grounds for legal action. Not for much, though. We were only able to recover around $5,000. So after legal fees, it was practically nothing. But I made sure to send the check to my ex as a form of compensation, even though it came out of my own pocket. He still hasn't cashed it. But I'm holding the $5,000 until the day he chooses to. He called me to say it wasn't necessary. But I believe that even if it's a small amount and doesn't make up for everything, it's at least symbolic. And it belongs to him. He told me not to send it. And I don't know what he's done with the check. But regardless, that money will be there for him. I also thought about releasing the video of my daughter's confession, which she didn't even know the videographer was recording. Apparently, she had told him not to film during her speech. But he did anyway. He thought she might change her mind later. And that if the moment turned out to be meaningful, he'd have it saved, just in case. In this state, recording people is allowed. But there was a legal gray area, since it wasn't a public place. However, technically, my daughter wasn't the client. Her fiancé's parents were. Even though it's not common to record an engagement party, they had planned to use the footage in a video for the wedding, alongside childhood clips. We had written approval from them to present it as evidence. And that allowed us to win the case and legally clear my ex's name. In the end, I didn't even need to release it publicly. Because after my daughter's fiancé made the breakup official, a string of drama followed between them. She made a social media post portraying herself as the victim, and her fiancé responded publicly with the truth we all now know. He said he didn't want to marry someone who had done the things she did, and described them. She defended herself, saying he didn't need to make things up for sympathy, that they both knew the truth. The strangest part was watching some of her friends, who were present at the engagement party, defend her, even though they knew what she had done. Anyway, her fiancé, yes, now officially ex, released the video publicly. He knew about our legal strategy, but was too angry to let it go. Luckily, the video had already been submitted as evidence, so it didn't have major legal consequences. It could have gone badly, but it didn't. So I won't be angry about it. What matters is that everything turned out fine, and that the video helped clear my ex's name, legally and socially. Amid all this, there was much more drama. My daughter accused me of betraying her, for helping my ex, for suing her, and even ranted about being filmed, when she had explicitly said not to be. She even tried to sue the videographer, but my lawyer helped him respond to the complaint, and the case was dismissed fairly quickly. Right now, I have no contact with my daughter. She's had to close her Instagram account, so people would stop harassing her. But I don't think that's too high a price to pay for everything she's done. If she hadn't been a minor when she made the false accusation, she could have faced prison time. So honestly, she should feel lucky that all she lost was her wedding, $5,000, and her reputation. That's how busy these past few months have been. Now you understand why it's taken me so long to find time to write this here. Especially since things were changing so quickly that a post would have become outdated within days. But yes, that's everything. Edit. My ex has decided to accept the money, but only on the condition that it be donated to a charity of his choice. From what little we've talked recently, I know he's happy that his life is starting to improve again. To be honest, I admire that man's strength. It was part of what made me fall in love with him in the first place, and one of the many reasons I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive my daughter.